Sitting in the faculty spotlight, we have Dr. Carolina Ramos. Good morning, doctor. How are you?
Good morning. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you. Good to meet you, and thank you for your time.
Of course.
Tell me, how long have you been here at Laredo College?
I'm in my 9th year.
Okay.
Yes.
So you started in 2017.
2017, yeah.
Oh, how has your experience been with Laredo College?
I've loved it. I taught at 2 institutions prior to this, but I was born and raised here, so
Okay.
I've loved being back in my community, working with students whose culture I understand. That's been really special.
Let's talk about your teaching journey. When did you become a teacher?
I started teaching in 2009
Okay.
at the University of New Mexico
Okay.
in Albuquerque. I was in graduate school at the time, and they gave me a teaching job. I owe them a lot because I was very young, inexperienced, but I learned so much. And so I was there for a couple of years. Then I moved back to Texas. I taught at UTSA for a while, and then this position opened up, and I applied and moved down for it. Yeah.
Was that the plan all along, was to teach?
When I went to college, I went in knowing I would study communication, but I wanted to be an investigative journalist. I loved writing, and I liked the idea of that sort of fast-paced life.
Yeah.
And during that time, I enjoyed what I was studying, but I also enjoyed some of my courses that had nothing to do with communication. And I think that enjoyment came from the professor. And so one of the things that really stands out to me is that I had a Spanish literature professor who came to class one day, and he said, we were reading a novel, and he said, "Isn't this so great that I get to come in here and just talk about this novel with you all? Like, this is my job." And I thought, that's really cool. Like,
Yeah.
I want this to be my job. And so I think that moment was a switch for me. And pretty soon after that, I started saying, I want to be a professor.
Wow. So you turned off the investigative journalist switch and said,
Yeah,
"Oh."
and in some ways, you still do a little bit of that when you do research, but no, it's very different. And the teaching part is what I love most.
Did you want to be an investigative journalist on television, for a newspaper or a publication?
Yeah, publication
Yeah.
or a newspaper. I liked the writing part of it. I took public speaking. Now I teach it. And I remember my professor there said, you should, he was very encouraging, great man, and said, like, you should do TV, and, this is what the trajectory would look like. But yeah, very quickly, I changed my mind and thought, no, I want to be in the classroom. Like, I want to talk about stuff I like. That sounds like a really nice job.
You've already shown in this brief time that you've been influenced by professors a great deal.
Definitely.
So it makes sense that you have gone on and done the same. But I'm curious about the investigative journalist part, because you can write about anything, but what was it about investigative journalism?
Yeah, I think just finding that little thread, like that there's more there than you're seeing, and trying to unravel it or, pull it and follow it. That was very intriguing. And I always enjoyed writing. So I thought it was a way to travel and meet new people and do some good along the way.
Now, let me guess, you're a big fan of Dateline.
I don't watch it as much as I used to, but yes, of course.
No, I am too. I don't think I could be an investigative journalist, but I do watching those kinds of shows. But that's interesting. And did you always want to teach in higher education, or was there a desire to teach younger?
No, it might sound bad, but no, I always wanted to teach adults. And I do enjoy
that
children.
Sound bad? I mean, that doesn't...
Yeah, but no, I never felt that desire to be an educator in K through 12.
Yeah.
And I have friends who are in it, and I always tell them I have so much respect for them. I think their job is so much harder than my job when it comes to teaching. They're dealing with students at a much more fragile and delicate time, I think. And now that I'm a mother, I think about that so much more. I think I have a big impact on students, and I catch them at a great point in their lives where they're making big decisions. But those formative years early on that our educators take on is very challenging and admirable.
Yeah, both have their challenges,
Yeah.
but I can see where you're coming from. You mentioned earlier you actually teach speech. You're a speech instructor, but you also help out with the BASORGL program. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But why speech? I mean, because you were good at it?
No, I wasn't. I always tell my students, I teach public speaking and intro to communication. Those are basic courses if you are a communication major or because they're required for the core here. But I knew going in to undergrad that I wanted a major in communication, and I somehow finangled my way and took public speaking my very last semester of university, which is a big no. Like, if you come in here, you have to take it in your first 2 years. And yeah, I just put it off. I was very intimidated. And I share that with my students because it's just, you never know, right? You might be afraid of something, and then you end up being passionate about it and wanting to share it with other people. But I learned that it's a skill, a very important one to have. If you can organize and defend your opinions, you're just going to be much better off at any job you do and in your relationships. So I enjoy teaching public speaking because it's a critical skill. It doesn't matter how much we text or rely on technology. The important things get done face to face, the way we're doing now, right? Absolutely. And I think some of it we are losing by our dependence on technology.
It's an extremely valuable skill to have. If you can communicate, it just gives you so much more value. To a potential employer or to any organization because they see that you've got that skill. And as you mentioned, it's diminishing. So how do you teach that now? Considering a lot of the students are used to the, 15-second videos that they see, and they're not used to actually being on the other end. How do you deal with that now?
Yeah, it's a challenge, and it takes a lot of creative thinking and coming up with scenarios and bringing in videos that they'll relate to and understand. So I have to step outside of my comfort zone too, because today public speaking isn't always the politician standing at the podium, right? Our politicians have changed what public speaking looks like, and now our students are used to just anyone going live and sharing their opinions. So we talk a lot about that. I bring in examples that are relevant and timely, so that they can tell me what they like, what they don't like, what resonates with them. Like, why do they choose to follow someone on social media versus someone else?
Does teaching speech now, do you have to identify the different types of speech now? Because you could be standing in front of an audience speaking to people, but you could also be speaking to the camera. So do you need to identify that, and is there a different way to do each?
Yeah, I think so. I think, and you know more than I do.
Actually, you don't.
You do. You have more experience than I do, for sure. But yeah, I definitely try to teach different modes. There is that more formal, at the podium, having an audience who will be quiet while you speak, and then we can talk about, people who just sit at their desk and look at the telephone and create a YouTube video, and they might be just as influential, if not more so, than the person at the podium. So I try to distinguish between those, knowing that more than likely my students are not aspiring to be politicians. I wasn't, right? So I wasn't trying to prepare for that kind of speech giving, but it's important to have those formal skills while also taking into consideration what we're adapting to with our public speaking looking just very different than it did 10 years ago even.
And to be an influencer or to be on YouTube or TikTok, you don't necessarily have to be, it's not necessarily about the delivery, it's the content. So it's just a different, I think to me, it's a different animal. People aren't looking at certain things that they might be looking at when you're standing in front of them. So it can be a lot more informal for sure, right?
Yeah, more informal. And I mean, people edit. We can talk about that too, right? How that just opens up this entire drawer of tools and filters, and there's just so much.
And everything from your phone.
Yeah.
Can be done from your phone. So then, do you still require them to stand up and give speeches?
Yes. Yeah, and I don't use a podium. I stayed away from that just because I think if we consider the types of talks and presentations we're exposed to now, that we don't really see podiums so much. Like if you think about TED Talks, which are still very popular, right? Speakers go up there, they use the space available to them. That exudes confidence too, when you can use the space and aren't tightly bound to your one spot. So I try to make them uncomfortable. I let them know that. I say the whole point is to be uncomfortable, and eventually you become comfortable. I imagine you at some point felt some nerves and anxiety.
No, I still do. I mean,
and that's a good thing.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, you've got to use that. But and the technology allows for you to be now, in front of everybody without necessarily needing a podium. And one thing I notice, you have to read the crowd. And I've noticed that more and more the crowds get really distracted really fast. So that's important to know for a speech teacher, because you've got to relay that. You've got to make sure you grab that audience. Let's switch gears a little bit here and let's talk about the Laredo College student. If you could define the Laredo College student, how would you define them?
That's a good question. I think most Laredo College students are thinking about what their time here will also mean to their family and younger siblings, cousins, that there is that sense of community and what is my position here going to do for the rest of my tribe, right, my community. And I felt that sense too. I still do. I tell them anything I do, I still think about how what I'm doing reflects on my parents, my siblings. We're all adults. And so that's one of the things I appreciate, that when it comes to their speeches, to their interests, to the decisions that they're making after graduating from here, that they're thinking about other people too. I think it's a pattern I see. I think most of our students are very hardworking, both personally and professionally, like outside and inside the classroom. And so that's something to take into consideration. Other college students might not work and have those responsibilities. And so that kind of burden can be very beneficial because you learn discipline, respect, managing a budget. But then it's also a lot to take on if you're a full-time student and working all the time. So I think the Laredo College student is busy and family-oriented, and that they are here dreaming big.
Yeah. And as an instructor, that's important to know.
Yes.
I mean, you've identified that, and you consider that when you go into the classroom.
Right. Yeah.
You also teach we call it the BASORGL, but it's the Bachelor of Applied Science and Organized Leadership. You teach in that for that cohort as well. What do you teach?
I teach behavior ethics and leadership. There are 2 parts, so part 1 and part 2.
So is that 2 different things, behavioral ethics and leadership, or it's the same title?
It's all one
lump
in
it all
there.
together.
Yes.
So how does the ethics relate to leadership?
Right.
Does that kind of make sense? Okay. And so what is that?
Yeah, it's a lot. Part 1.
It's a lot different than speech, that's for sure.
Very, very different. Yeah, part 1 focuses more on philosophy, on ethics, but heavily on philosophy, so philosophical theories that ask questions about where our values come from, our beliefs. A lot of it is very old school and can seem dense, but I've been surprised students really like it because it's a discussion about things they already experience and know, but now here's new language for talking about it.
Yeah.
And then once we have those theories down, those concepts are well established, then we take part two, and part two is more about application. So how are you seeing these theories in everyday life, in your experiences, professionally and personally? Because no matter what your job is, where you are on the hierarchy, you're going to have to make ethical decisions.
Okay.
And
so that's what the relevance is, because the philosophy is, well, those ethics come from somewhere. Is that accurate?
right.
Okay.
Yeah, so our ethics are not something that we're born with. We are shaped by our experiences and people along the way. Some have a greater impact than others. And sometimes we forget about those experiences and those people shaped those ideas. But later we're quick to have opinions, right?
Yeah.
So.
And in leadership, that's important because you're leading others, and it's important to know that they have different values, perhaps.
Definitely that. And then also to understand where you come from.
Okay.
I think that is one of the things I focus on most when I teach the courses, that I want students to understand their own values and ethics. Because whether you can recognize it or not, they are going to influence the decisions you make, how you treat people. And if you don't know where they're coming from, then you might end up in a tight spot or doing someone a disservice, maybe an entire team a disservice. So it's really interesting to read people's essays, the experiences they have, and seeing them understand how maybe something that happened when they were 12 years old has just really molded their passion for service or molded the way they think about a particular issue. All of those things come into play with who we are as leaders.
I know I asked you at the very beginning, but having said everything that you said about the LC student and everything we've talked about, what do you like about Laredo College?
I like the people. Yeah, someone this week was asking me about how my time at UTSA and UNM were different. And I said, there were more students, first of all, because they were large universities, and there was more diversity in terms of the population. So those things stand out to me right away on a superficial level. And I said, but I love teaching here. I think we're in a very special spot being in Laredo. You don't realize it if you're from here all the time because it's just normal to you. But the blending of cultures, of languages, all of that is unique to border cities around the world. And so I think seeing that in our students and teaching communication and seeing them find those bridges between their own cultures, their own responsibilities, trying to make sense of their futures in connection to their place here is really nice. It's a privilege to be a professor here, and the people have made it great. I've always told my students also that when I taught at the other universities, there were no big dramas that happened, but there were little things that happened that I thought like, oh, this is different. And I see the way students are here in terms of the way they treat each other and treat me, just the way we interact, that you can't teach that. Like, it's just part of our culture. And I value that. Yeah.
What do you, when you're not teaching or working on teaching, what do you do?
I like to read a lot of fiction, and I like to run.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Um,
Not running too much right now.
I didn't want to say anything, but you are a mom already. You have a 2.5-year-old,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
And you've got a baby on the way. What's it like being a mom?
It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done. Yeah. And I'm sure people say that too, but also the most rewarding. It's hard to say more than that without getting too sentimental, but it's been very special because it's challenged me and it's brought out a side of me or sides of me that I didn't even know were there. I do think I'm
Things that you probably worried about before you gave birth the first time because you didn't know you had this in you.
Yeah. And so I think it's made me a better person in all of my other relationships and roles.
So you read fiction, you run, any movies or anything like that?
I like movies too, yeah.
Series?
Series. I'm trying to think of what I'm watching right now. I'm watching Hacks.
Oh, that's on Max, right? I've seen the previews, but I haven't.
Yeah, with the comedian from Vegas and her head writer.
I'll have to write that down.
It's interesting to see that dynamic between these two women.
Okay.
But yeah.
I've gotten recommendations from students, and now I'm getting one from you, so I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah. Maybe I should have thought about it more. I don't know
No,
how
good.
it reflects on me,
No,
but yeah.
Your favorite movie? Do you have a favorite movie?
Oh, that's a tough one. Yeah.
Because there's so many, or you just can't think of one?
There are so many. Like one that I've always liked since I was a little girl is A Little Princess.
Okay.
It's a kid's movie.
Sure.
It's based on a book. But yeah, it stuck with me. Like that movie is about a young girl and her kind of losing her dad and losing everything that she grew up with, and then finding the power within herself to be strong and resilient. And so when I would watch it as a little girl, I thought like, oh, I want to be like that.
That's deep.
Yeah, it's deep for a kid's movie. Watch it.
Yeah.
It's a lot. But yeah, there has to be something more recent.
Well, but that's what came to your mind.
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah.
More recent, I mean, do you have a certain genre that you like to follow?
I like more drama. Yeah, I always say I want books and movies that will make me cry. Like if I don't cry, I don't know.
Really?
Was it worth the time?
Okay. Well,
But no, I like to laugh too.
Well,
Yeah.
absolutely. Music?
Music, I like more alternative 90s folksy stuff. Yeah.
Dr. Carolina Ramos here at the South Campus. Thank you so much for coming back to Laredo, first and foremost. Thank you for all that you do for the college, and good luck. Congratulations.
Thank you. So nice talking to you. I appreciate it.